Welcome to Truth Not Tradition Online Bible Study for August 24th, 2016. I'm Tony Smario, coming from my father, BroSal.org YouTube channel. And I want to get back into the book of Enoch this week. Last week we started on, we're about halfway through the volume of this so-called book. And it really gets, that's the last half, at least the last third. It keeps getting more interesting as we get into his prophecies. And so I'm trying not to rush any of us because we're not going anywhere fast, I don't think. But I do want to get back into Enoch. And I want to also mention that I find that last week's diversion, inspired by Enoch, I suppose, into basic Christianity was very important for me as a gauge of my own journey so far. I think about since Dad and I have had me doing most of the teaching the last year and the commentary, though we talk about things amongst ourselves, but I do the commentary that's recorded. And over this past year, I've discovered so many things while simply trying to keep up with a progressive, not meaning changing, progressive meaning always moving forward, our deeper understanding of what we've been studying for so long. And it led me to this realization that the rapture has been a put-up job, for one. Also, a year ago, I used to think Islam was the Antichrist kingdom that the devil was going to bring to cause all of this to come about. I had no real knowledge of Quranic prophecy and eschatology, and I've learned from Sheikh Imran Hossein this year that neither do the Muslims have much knowledge. They're just like the Christians. And this is the point I want to make this week, is people have to realize how much the wool has been pulled over all of our eyes and for how long. And that the reason we're in the end times isn't because the times are any more evil than they were in the days when that phrase was coined 2,000 years ago by Paul. Times are evil. They've always been evil. The darkness, Jesus said, lights come into the world, but the darkness has not understood it. That's 2,000 years old. All these secret societies down through Egypt, that was already, over a millennia old in the time of Jesus. So there's nothing new under the sun, says Solomon. And so we have to stand back far enough to get a perspective that allows for a cohesive, coherent, if not cohesive, at least a coherent narrative that gives life some sort of meaning and places our existence in a framework that makes sense to us so that we might stimulate our own action, faith. That's what I'm in it for anyway. And I'm starting to get that perspective. It's as if I just keep removing myself, or by confronting all of these contradictions in my own belief systems and dogmatic ideals, I've been able to question them and in that way remove myself one step further into the seeking of the answer. And what I found is that most of the information, most of the tradition that's come to us is just as skewed as it was that came to the Jews at the time of Jesus. Right? What are they told by Jesus? The Pharisees, the leaders of the religion. You say you speak for Moses, but Moses talked about me, right? Moses was waiting for me. So if you knew Moses, if you were following Moses, you'd know me. If you loved the Father, you'd love me. So something had happened in their trip where they wind up saying the words, going through the rituals, beating the drums of being the Jews, being the perpetuators of the Mosaic covenant, and yet here comes their Messiah claiming, if you even knew, if you believed Moses, you'd believe me. But obviously, that's the story from the Christian standpoint. They did, they didn't believe Moses. They were already this synagogue of Satan, claiming to be Jews that are not, perhaps, or if that's safe to use as a symbol. But however we slice it, it's impossible to get away from the fact that the only Jesus of Nazareth we have in history comes and tells the leaders of the religion that if you believed Moses, you'd believe in me. If you loved the Father, you'd love me. He tells the Christians, if you love me, you'll follow me. Not just keep repeating to people that you're judging Jesus is Lord. I'm judging you in Jesus' name, which is essentially what Christianity does. And so I think it's very important to keep pointing out as we endeavor to, to throw light on these mysteries and hope that in some spiritual way, something will be unlocked for us in our own search, why we study things like the book of Enoch. But meanwhile, I want to point out that this Christianity in the world is this false Christianity that we see and hear about. That the news in the world is all put on. Even the facts are simply used to carry the narrative, which is completely put on. It's as I've been saying about the presidential election, the people that are moving militaries into place right now and putting the articles out in the paper about what's going on with ISIS and what's going on with Zika virus and what's going on with all these other, everyday occurrences, pansexual, mania, the race war, all these things. I mean, these people aren't waiting to see who gets elected president to decide whether, what the next phase of their plan is going to be. And that's part of how fake all the news is. They represent it like Putin's doing this and Obama's doing that. You never hear these journalists talk about, who's behind Obama, who keeps gaining by this constant move in the world to, indoctrinate our children into the education system, vaccinate us into the modern medical system, sort of dumb us down into this two-party, nonsense called a political system. All these things that is quite clear. Anyone who wants to study it, it's all right there. And in the modern day, they're even throwing it back at you so that they can stimulate even more division between people. To see that it's all right there, and the people that are looking can start jumping up and down and screaming about it. Meanwhile, the mainstream media keeps acting like that it's just invisible. No, Obama's doing this and Putin's doing that and North Korea's leaders threatening the world and China. We speak of China like it's just we don't speak of just the president of China's going after the South China Sea. Isn't that funny? Putin's going after Crimea, but, whatever, I can't think of how to pronounce his name right now. He's not going after the South China Sea. China is going after it like a whole nation is unified in this movement. Israel is spoken of that way. Iran is spoken of that way. But America is spoken of as Obama's doing this and Putin's doing that. It's really it's such a game. And Christians, I think, are being used in this game. And that's why it's important to study all these aspects of the game, whether it's the geopolitics or whether it's the mysticism, whether it's the Kabbalah or the Book of Enoch or the nightly news. It's important to have a coherent narrative into which, when you step back far enough, all of this stuff makes some sense. It all has some meaning. And when you talk about Obama this and Clinton that, and Trump's going to do this, and Trump's going to do that. Yeah, sure he is. Because ever since they blew Kennedy's brains out, there's so much evidence that the presidents make the decisions. It's such a silly narrative for people to talk about that when I stand back and look at that, I think, well, that's just that's the Pied Piper. That's the brainwashing. That's following all the wrong spirits in this Lord of Spirits kind of world that Enoch paints, right? And I guess maybe that's what as we go through the storehouses today. So what I want to tell people that might want to start tuning into our station or sharing with their friends, I know most of the people that listen to Bible study are also already tuned in. So I'll just throw this at you guys today if I can find it real quick. I was reminded of it when I had felt compelled to respond to someone today who I think is another one of these Christian sites taking things all out of context. Everybody's, war right now. And I'm going to tell you that everything the Christians talk about, especially the popular stuff on the internet, I say is all propaganda. The fact that, they're wrong, this rapture, that what about the Shemitah year last year? A year ago, everybody was screaming about a Shemitah judgment that was coming on the world. Where's that? And Obama being the Antichrist, and Obama taking a third term, and the Pope is the Antichrist, the Pope is the false prophet. I can almost guarantee all that's wrong. It doesn't suit the Scripture. I mean, go check out our look at Revelation. That doesn't make any sense. What's that got to do with the temple? What's that really got to do with the whore? The Pope didn't come along till long time after God's problem with his people. That just doesn't take into account the whole story. It's always been the 10 tribes that were the whore. Show me when the Catholic Church ever became the whore of Babylon. Unless you're going to connect them to the 10 tribes, which is possible to do. At least part of that influence, perhaps. And maybe that's that Babylon. And they're the ones that are fighting the Muslims, who perhaps are the only real, Iran and the Muslims. These are the people that are really trying to believe in God. And that's why God's going to use them to wipe out this other system. I don't know, but that narrative, when you stand back, plays into this modern world as being, reasonable and possible and something, as an educated guess, someone might want to consider, rather than this silly Christian version of Obama the Antichrist, or the Prince of Monaco the Antichrist, and the Pope is the Antichrist, and Catholicism is these are all really, I think, purposefully misled. That's why they're all out there. These are the Pharisees. These are the teachers of the religion. This is what comes from their tradition, following man's tradition. These are the interpretations that come out of it. And so I say, beware. And so I want to read you something real quick before we get to Enoch. This is out of Matthew 24. After they've asked him, right? This is the part where Jesus went out of the temple, and his disciples came up to him and were showing him the building of the temple. But he said to them, "Behold, do you not see all of these? Truly I say to you, not a stone shall be left here upon one another, which will not be torn down." And when he sat on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came up, talking among themselves, and they said to him, "Tell us when these things will happen, and what is the sign of your coming and of the end of the world?" And I don't want to wait, I want to get through Enoch today for those that have been patiently waiting for me to get back to it. And the few of you that are sticking with that study, I do appreciate it. But I find that what's going on in the world, attending to the fact that this is the end times, that we are in this time, is very important. And here's why. Jesus answered, saying to them, "Be careful that no man deceives you." Right? Because, see, all of these things are going to happen over this entire 2,000-year period. The temple being destroyed, the sign of your coming, and the end of the world. Right? Those might even be three things that happen thousands of years apart. The temple is going to get destroyed in approximately 70 AD, from what we know. His coming is going to be, as we've studied in Enoch, this Son of Man that all the kings are going to bow to. So that's this beginning of this millennial kingdom that we're waiting for, what we call the end times. But this isn't the end of the world in the sense of creating all things new again. That doesn't happen for thousands of years. Why Christians don't take that into account when they discuss eschatology is beyond me, since it's in our own revelation and it's in Enoch. And so I say, it's because our true narrative has been stolen from us. It's been manipulated, perverted into this profane, absurd understanding that renders all of these other interpretations that give us what we're waiting for is an antichrist that's anti-Christian and is going to ride in looking like a devil on a pitchfork and force everyone to take a 666 stamp across their forehead, right? And twist everybody's arm and start threatening to cut off Christians' heads, which is why they're pointing at the Muslims. See, and all that's false. That's not what it says. That's all false. That's not what Christianity is. That's not what the Scriptures say. That's not what I'm anticipating from it. Subtle one, the subtle one, subtle, deceit, deception. And through deceit he shall destroy many, right? It says in Daniel, this prince that's to come, a prince is to come, and through deception will destroy many. The subtle one. What's this subtle one? The spirit of Antichrist. What's this person trying to do? Impersonate the Messiah. How do you impersonate him? By being the opposite? Huh? If I want to impersonate someone, do I come looking like them or looking the opposite of them? Come on. So this is where it's gotten twisted. The spirit of Antichrist, false deliverer, another deliverer, not Jesus of Nazareth, some other deliverer. A false deliverer, not an anti-Jesus. That's not what the words say. A false Jesus that John is saying already in his time, anyone that denies this Jesus of Nazareth is the Messiah. That's the false deliverer. And so what is Jesus telling them? For many, this is the 4th verse, Jesus answered when they said, when will be these things, the temple being destroyed and the sign of your coming and the end of the world? Which sounds to me like they're asking a mouthful. Jesus answered, saying to them, be careful that no man deceives you. For many will come in my name and say, I am the Christ. Not I'm Jesus. I am the Christ. I'm the deliverer. And they will deceive many. Many will come and say, I'm the deliverer, and they will deceive many. Now, I think this is a warning to them about that time that they're going to face when the temple's destroyed 30 or 40 years into their future. Because many now are going to hear this story all over Palestine, that this Jesus was the Messiah, or that at least the prophet came. The prophet, they refer to him in our scriptures. The prophet, the one that David spoke of. There's going to be the prophet, capital P. The prophet's going to come. He's going to be the one that saves everybody. He's going to be the one that sets everything right. Which is how they, it was such a mystery that this Jesus of Nazareth was the one. You mean this guy this poor, dirty, homeless wanderer wandering around with these other bunch of, tax collectors and sinners, fishermen. This is the guy that's going to make everything right. See, so if you step back far enough from the story, it's pretty easy to see and put it in its context and even see it as a beautiful poem, if you want to see it that way. It's a beautiful legend. They're expecting this great conqueror in the manner of David, a king of the world in the manner of Solomon, and they get a carpenter in the manner of what good ever came out of Nazareth, right? From the Pharisees, like a modern day person. What good ever came out of, some slum, our deepest slum? How could he be from there? So that's what's really going on in their world. So imagine now, and he tells them as we've gone through in the gospel, I pray for these guys who are going to go out, and give their life. He'd showed them what I want from you. Get on your knees and clean each other's feet. The greatest among you will be your servant. That's what that's what I want from you as you go out now to show me to the world. What did I do? I got on my knees to clean your feet. That's what I did. I want you to go show the world that now for me. And I don't think that was supposed to, I don't think he meant his disciples who'd been listening to him for however long he'd been around to think he meant really literally cleaning feet. He meant them to get the metaphor, to get the analogy. I want you to be givers. I want you to be ready to go give yourself to everybody like a servant, so that they go, whoa, who are these weirdos? Hey, these are the servants of that prophet that they say died and rose from the grave, right? This is what I'm trying to get to. So that many then in that time could be wandering around. I mean, shoot, not every person in that region saw Jesus and could identify him as the one. And then even his disciples, when the guy on the river, after he, rises from the dead in the story, in the Gospels, they don't say, hey, it's Jesus. They say, hey, stranger. He says, throw the net. He calls out, how's the fishing? Oh, no good. Throw the net out on the other side of the boat. And they get this great catch and say, it's him, it's our Lord. They don't look and say, obviously, look at him, it's Jesus. So he appears as somebody different, just some stranger, right? So that's already built into their story. So how do you know now that he's not warning them? Don't be deceived. A lot of these people are going to wander around now and say, I'm him. Yeah, remember, I came back to life. Here I am. I'm the Messiah. How would you know that he's not the one? So I think that's what he's really talking about here. For many will come in my name and say, I am the deliverer, and they will deceive many. They will deceive many. Let's not even go into right now how that's possible, except through all this, spirit worship, through every type of, whether it's the worship of the good spirits, let's say, the giving of oneself, the sacrificing of oneself for others, that perhaps brings on, supernatural healing and visions and such. Or the other kind of spirit worship of what? Sacrificing the blood of innocents, doing battle against Christianity, if we're to believe the traditional explanation, brings on the favor of evil spirits, Anyway, in a world where people weren't so easily fooled and believed in spirits, he's telling them, be careful. Many will come in my name and say, I'm the deliverer, and she'll deceive many. He didn't say they'll be easy to spot. He said many will come and they will deceive many. You are bound to hear of revolutions and rumors of wars. This is where our King James has always rendered it, wars and rumors of wars, that's so popular today. My Greek Orthodox version, which by the way still says wineskins, where everybody else now says bottles in the King James version, if you're up to speed on that whole Mandela effect concept. And mine's still in Paul's 1 Corinthians, where he says, if I have not love, I am nothing. And now your Bible, if you're reading the King James translation or any derivative, says, if I have not charity, I am nothing. My Bible still, funny enough, this ancient Eastern text, translated from the Aramaic Peshitta, still has wineskins. It's a very interesting clue to me in this whole Mandela effect, which I'm going to do a end time event show on shortly. But for now, in Matthew, I just want you to realize that that's where we're at here, this wars and rumors of wars. Many will come in my name and say, I am the Christ, and they'll deceive many. You're bound to hear of revolutions and rumors of wars. Interesting, too, that the words here is rendered revolutions, which seems also to fit quite clearly our day. Revolutions and rumors of wars, Watch out and do not be disturbed. This is the part I want to keep hammering home right now as our message along with basic Christianity. That you're being fooled. You're supposed to love your neighbor. You're supposed to follow him, not just say, Jesus, I believe in Jesus. Jesus saves. I love Jesus. Yes, of course you do. Now follow him, which is, it depends on how perfect you want to be, but ultimately, give your head, be a servant, give all your money to the poor, love your neighbor as yourself, don't judge, right? Turn your other cheek. That's what it really means. Everything else is just BS. That's what it means to follow him. But meanwhile, what he seems to be warning us all, you're bound to hear revolutions and rumors of wars. Watch out and don't be disturbed. For all of these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Okay, now what end does he mean? Does he mean the recreating of the worlds? No, I think he means this end that's Armageddon that we've determined before he comes back to rule. Because that's what they're worried about. When is the sign of your coming? For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and plagues and earthquakes in different places. But all these things are just the beginning of travail. And that's, what I want people to see right now. That I don't find being perpetuated or even being discussed properly in the rendering of this wars and rumors of wars through the Christian alternative media, so-called. It's instantly connected with this final battle, right? It jumps right to the rest of this return and the false prophet and all this, what we're expecting to happen as we get into this, as this 7-year covenant is opened up, that we're watching for from Daniel, as the first seal in Revelation. We're all watching for this. Islam's waiting for the same thing. They looking for this first seal of Revelation on the white horse, the righteous king to come out and defeat many. I've been saying for a long time, I think that's going to be what we're going to be given as the righteous caliph, the righteous leader, the righteous king that will rise to be the caliph. If not, start as the new caliph that will defeat ISIS, he's the one that's going to come in to help us out now when all these poor people have been devastated after the war with ISIS, which I say we're not to the end of yet. There's a lot more devastation to bring. It's just building right now. And so, but what Jesus says through Matthew is, don't be disturbed at this. The end is not yet. All these things must happen, but this is just the beginning of travail. So, I say we're in for a little longer haul, you guys. And we should be looking at our news that way and stop panicking. All this stuff is being put on us on purpose. All of the race war, all of the pandemic diseases, all of the, pangender mania suddenly. That's all being done to rattle our nerves on purpose. The military threat, that's all being done, and they're going to keep reporting more deaths and more problems. And just keep loving your neighbor when that problem comes to you. I mean, right? That's all you got to do. It's an easy fight, really, is to not give in to all that. I'm going to tell you, a lot of it's probably doesn't even exist. They just present it with some pictures. But a lot of it probably doesn't even exist. It's just a hoax. So what I want to start, letting Christians know that are tuning into a Bible study, that don't be afraid of all their fear mongering right now. And it's not because Jesus is going to come back and save you and I from it. No, it's because we have to stand. Our faith has to be tried by the end time fire, whatever that means. And believe, for me anyway, I believe it will be tried. And in whatever way that means, whether they're going to come for me and, arrest me as a dissident, whether they're going to just you know, shoot me with a vaccine that kills me, or, you know, let me just, you know, live to rattle on my story as another, and just, you know, make me out to be another fringy character that society should shun, because in their plan it's still far enough away. I'll get mine in the end. I don't know what the answer is. All I know is when you follow Revelation to the conclusion of the mark of the beast, which I still say is, you know, after they've got some culling going on, they're not just going to let the people revolt. People are going to want that. People are going to beg for that mark. It's going to be only the elect who say, nope, I see through this. I see what's gone on. I've been watching it all along. I got this. I know that I can't do this. It's not going to be like Christianity thinks. I don't believe with some Satan, you know, threatening everybody, sitting on his fiery throne with his pitchfork, and Christians being pushed. Are you going to bow to Satan? I think it's going to be subtle, and I think most of Christianity is going to be purged already, as it's being purged for 100 years at least and more, but a concentration of it for 100 years now. It's being purged on every level, and the psychological level is the one that's been going on in America and Western Europe since the Enlightenment, and certainly in my lifetime and in the last 100 years. I mean, just a progressive idea to get rid of this mythology of a God sitting on a throne and a Jesus that rose from the dead. And so, you know, it's the baby in all that bathwater. It's the Jesus that rose from the dead. You can't prove that didn't happen. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that that's what the whole world turns on. And so rescuing that story is what I'm all about for myself, or trying to, not rescuing it for the sake of some fantasy Christianity, rescuing it for the sake of identifying for myself whether it's believable. Is that what the world turns on? Because if it's not, and it's just this silly story that they're going to make it out to be, a bunch of crazies putting a man's name to an ancient worship of the sun, trying to combine a bunch of pagan and Jewish ritual into some supposed consummation of Scripture, some supposed, you know, prophetic happening. You know, that's the way most of the world paints it, is just at best an unfortunate misunderstanding, at worst a purposely manipulated caricature, right? A purposely manipulated falsehood, masquerade. And that's such a popular view now that the world's really against, you know, almost all, you know, religion, Christianity and Islam in particular, where everybody's only for the Zionists because they're a military regime that, I mean, the bankers are behind the Zionist movement, but I caution, the Zionists is another tool in all this. They are Zionism, I should say. There are Zionists at the top, just as there are ancient, not ancient, but fairly ancient, back to those, you know, 15th, 16th century Europeans, the people the Warburgs descend from and such, these families that descend from the royalty of those ages, you know, they still sit on their part of those territories, those castles. And so those people aren't all Zionists, political Zionists. It's that political Zionism is their tool to go take Palestine because they want to build their temple on that mountain, because that's what the Antichrist wants to do subtly. Pretend to be God and rebuild the temple for himself so they can worship Baal as God. You know, that might be the seven-headed beast, right, that the Jewish church has always been riding. This Baal worship that wasn't at the time that John was writing. but was going to come out of the pit. You know, all that's got to be symbology, you guys. It can't really be. I mean, really, it's a little horned creature down in a pit. That's what that all means. Anyway, so with that, let's get into Enoch, because that's the way Enoch sort of, you know, gives us our world. And I want to present that we have to think outside the box. Angels must mean something. And as I, you know, last week, I want to run through, if I can, a little bit of last week's, because if you remember, if you recall the images from last week, again, it was centered on this Son of Man, and Enoch's gotten taken away from human reality. His name no longer in the earth, and taken to where the angels are, and rivers of fire, and the Lord of Spirits, right? All this imagery, and he's so happy, and the Lord of Spirits is happy with him, right? And he sees this, you know, round about this fire in this house are the cherubim and the seraphim and the Ophanim, and they don't sleep, but watch over the throne of his glory. And that's where we got these angels that couldn't be counted, right? 10,000 times 10,000. And they're around this house, and the archangels go in and out of the house, and the head of days comes out of the house, right? And I've been trying to present for my own, you know, questioning, what does that really mean? What could that, you know, what's that represent? Enoch even says the four walls of this house. So he's seeing some representation, but what do these angels look like to him? He doesn't describe them as similar to this Son of Man. Could they be just dots or stars, bright little lights? How does he, you know, what is he seeing when he's seeing an angel? And so I think that's what I want to ask everybody to keep in mind as we enter this difficult part for me to interpret on any kind of linear level, as Enoch's going to go into storehouses for stars and thunder and hail and snow. And it all sounds a little bit quaint, and, you know, it sounds a little poetic, a little bit like Homer, you know, rambling off into some yarn about the heavens. So, and that's why I want to preface it, because when I read that, is that what we're at? Enoch's just as some scholars believe, some 3rd or 4th century BC pseudo prophet yarning off at the mouth about his sort of version, the way I yarn off at the mouth with my commentary about my version of Christianity and how it's gone false. I mean, is this just some beautiful Homeric type of epic? It could be, right? It sure has all these weird elements, as I've said so many times, the timing of all these breaks from the flood and the projected coming of this Son of Man being central, and the projected rule of this Son of Man, and the righteous taking rule, and all the sinners being swept away. But then this time period that ends again before things are made new again. You know, that's all before Revelation. So anyway, I've gone over that so many times, but it's the reason that I keep coming back myself to saying, Enoch, there's as much evidence in my mind that Enoch's been well preserved through this long history, and accounts for the similarity in all this world religion, that there was at one point after the flood sort of a world religion. Everybody knew God. That's why even Nebuchadnezzar was that head of gold all the way. When you get finally to, you know, the history that we're measuring and keeping quite, you know, in our own eyes sort of clearly, like we have a grasp on Babylonian history, Egyptian history as much as we can. It's part of our narrative. Where when you go back to Enoch, and even post-flood, Nimrod, we don't have much of a grasp of it except through these ancient, writings that are very hard to verify in any historical way, except through their own declarations. So, Babylon, though, through Daniel's called this head of gold. God gave you this kingdom. So if you think about how well established God must have been coming out of the flood, and how all these different religions that pop up around the world, all the way to the Americas, which, yes, later become these religions of sacrifice and blood. But I mean, look what Jesus is. Look what the Mosaic covenant is. Passover, put the blood, slay the lamb in place of your firstborn, because God's going to spare your firstborn. And then after that, now you owe me your firstborn of everything. You owe them to me. In fact, you got to break the neck of your firstborn ass, because you owe me, because you're like that ass. But I'll let you redeem the firstborn of everything else with what? Blood, of course, blood. So the redemption of your life and the life of your children and your sustenance through God, to God, through blood, has been there from the very beginning of at least the Mosaic covenant. We don't know what, Noah was commanding his sons to do. But interestingly enough, from the time of the Mosaic covenant, and when you can at least track a lot of these, Aztec, Mayan, these early cultures, can be traced back to a time that's right around that 1500 BC mark, with all this blood sacrifice, So, I mean, it's, again, stand back far enough to have a cohesive narrative that takes into account everything that's really part of our experience. And anyway, that's why I want to look at Enoch. And so in all that, I think, maybe he really is the oldest, at least fragments of it, parts of this, some of this. The gist of this is something that's been handed down for all of our history. It's the oldest piece. It's either that or a Homeric poem that seems to pull together all the elements of the story well enough to be useful. Just like the Hindu religion, just like the Muslim religion. To me, they're all very useful in seeing the way the Word of God has been disseminated. The prophecies and all that kind of stuff has been disseminated over the centuries, the millennia. So even if it's only a poem in a Homeric epic sort of way, it really does seem to touch on a lot of important details. The Son of Man, the centrality, the the things that, the multidimensional reality that you get an idea from Revelation. Paul, I know a man that was taken to the third heaven, whether in the body or not, I don't know. I mean, you can't even tell. Yeah, I was in the body and I went through a liquid door and it looked, the aliens made it for me. No, it's not like that. So that's the connection I find with Enoch. It's just sci-fi enough to be outrageous and mythological, and yet it's just, has these deep roots, these esoteric connections, if not exoteric connections, that to me are undeniable. So anyway, with that very long introduction again, I just hope people realize it's super important to me that I'm not your regular Bible study. I want people to hear stuff here and get it in their heads that we're talking about some different stuff. And I guess I know you do. I suppose if I'm out there, I'm saying, come on, that's why I'm here. All right, so Enoch's thrilled to death because now he's in this place and he sees all this stuff. And in those days, my eyes saw the secrets of the flashes of lightning and the lights and the regulations governing them. And they flash for a blessing or a curse as the Lord of Spirits wishes. And there I saw the secrets of the thunder, and how when it crashes in heaven above, the sound of it is heard. And they showed me the dwellings of the dry ground, and the sound of the thunder, for peace and for blessing, or for a curse, according to the word of the Lord of Spirits. All right, so already, I guess, before I go too far, this is all going to get sort of, I'm not sure how to phrase it. It's a little sci-fi for my taste. The thunder. I mean, I grew up in the scientific era, as we all did. And this is very anti-scientific. Not scientific. False scientific. This is the other direction. Scientific. The secrets of the thunder and how when it crashes in heaven above, the sound is heard. And the sound of thunder for peace or for blessing or for a curse according to the word of the Lord of Spirits. So, again, in our anthropomorphized vision, my mind can only imagine, some Homeric sort of entity, demigod, Apollo, throwing down a blessing or a curse, right? Some Zeus with a lightning bolt type of thing. And, now I'm old enough to be able to entertain that as somehow meaningful, and yet know that I need to fit that into a metaphysical structure of some kind. Because it can't be that way. I'm just determined that if it was that way, there'd be a lot more signs of lightning bolts, trees walking around, right? People turning into demigods and that being common knowledge, as it seems to be perhaps before the flood, where dragons come from, and all these pictures of half human, half animal type of images that were made. Why did God hate all these images that were made? Were they made of things that these people learned in their rituals by summoning up their spirits and their evil spirits that Enoch told them, your offspring will be known as evil spirits in the earth. So these people summon up the evil spirits, and the evil spirits show them what they look like or what they want their God to look like. I don't know, but come on, picture what we have to work with as a world of experience. And imagine that somehow, whether this is a very deep, poetic, mythological revealing, or something even more in the realm of a transcendent, dimensional explanation of things, revealing of things, what does this mean? Thunder and lightning, how could that be? What do we mean when we're going to say that? Just as what do we mean when we got this house with the rivers coming out and all these millions of angels surrounding it, and the cherubim, the Zoan that never sleep. I mean, darn it, my mind has a picture that my intellect knows is ridiculous. So what are they trying to tell me is, I guess, what I'm asking you folks to consider for a minute. What am I supposed to get from this? And the only thing I can get is that there's a deeper dimensional, mystical meaning behind something that, even as we come into our scientific age, would be easily explainable in the way that it works in a third dimensional space-time reality. The way that the waves are moved around, the molecules, the energy, the magnetism. That's all perfectly explainable. The schism, I suppose, of the medieval times was, at least the one that comes down to us as Western civilization, is in not allowing the paradox of the both, that there could possibly be something so absurd and unexplainable as a Lord of Spirits who speaks thunder and lightning as blessings and curses, and something so perfectly explainable as a third dimension in which those blessings and curses can be accounted for in material explanation. And that's, I guess, what I'm getting out of it, is it points again for me to this dimensional possibility being explained in a way that can only be taken that way. And, I refuse to let myself go the way of, brain dead, brainwashed Santa Claus Christianity that's, quotes their scripture and demonstrates that their image of God is this Zeus sitting on a cloud judging sinners from heaven, which of course is just outside our atmosphere, behind the moon somewhere. And they don't bother to account for the rest of Scripture being of any metaphysical reality at all, and a dimensional existence being necessary for God to be something more than that. Okay, so I want to go on, but I want to keep planting these seeds for people. What do you think I think when I read it? That, God on his throne is speaking blessings and curses against sinners. That's what it sounds like when you read the story, like a bedtime story. Is that, but come on. I want us to be the rare group of Christians who actually think and have a basis of thought for what they believe and why, and how that can then be, the unseen spirit of motivation for our actions. Because we know what we're talking about in our own conjecture of things. So anyway, here we are with Enoch and the thunder and lightning, and he sees them as the secrets now. Remember that. This is secrets, which are, when we're introduced to this whole story from the beginning, these are these secrets that the watchers, who are sons of God, angels in their own right, have misappropriated to mankind, which is causing the need for this wiping out of them to begin with. And so, anyway, I don't want to have to keep reinforcing the metaphysical concept to the extent that I ruin this narrative of Enoch, but I keep wanting to. That's how, in my own mind, I can't keep going any further without reinforcing it to myself, to recall that I'm trying to interpret this on some metaphysical level in which to give it some credit and that it might help enlighten me to something. So, secrets of the thunder, and how this sound is both for a blessing and a curse according to the word of the Lord of Spirits. Now that word may be logos. That, again, I don't imagine that means Zeus sitting there speaking. Okay, thunder over here. I'm pissed off over there. Heavier on those guys. They're really bad. Oh, but some good thunder over here for this guy. I don't think that's what it means. According to the logos of the Lord of Spirits, this thunder is for a blessing and a curse. Might just mean the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. And after this, all the secrets of the lights and of the flashes of lightning were shown to me. They flashed to bring blessing and satisfaction. And the other angel spoke to me, the one who went with me, and showed me what is secret, what is first and last in heaven, in the heights and under the dry ground, in the depths, and at the ends of the earth, and at the foundations of heaven, and in the storehouses of the winds. So it all takes on a framework of the description of someone being shown another world that reflects their own world, right? In the sense of space and time, heights and depths, the heaven, the dry ground, the ends of heaven as if there's an end, right? So, I'm not sure how to interpret that except to think of an end of something like a story. The end, as we read in Revelation, meaning the consummation of something, right? That end, that word that means end, is the finish of something that was aimed at from the beginning. And since we know that's what's going on, I would interpret Enoch in this place to be pointing out that what he saw from these angels, again, what does my mind picture but some silly idea of an usher of some kind, a servant, ushering me around, showing me things, okay? So what's it saying? That the lights and the lightning are for a blessing and satisfaction. Showed me what is secret, what is first and last in heaven, in the heights and under the dry ground, in the depths, the ends of heaven, at the foundations of heaven, and in the storehouses of the winds. So this is the part we're getting to the storehouses now. That's why I'm trying to take it slow, because otherwise it seems meaningless when I read it. But when I do take it slow and think about it, it makes me reflect on a dimensional reality that's being trying to be spoken of, the unspoken being put into some sort of framework, like a nightmare or a dream, right? Things that don't make any sense, like one of those movies like Inception or something, a dream within a dream within a dream. You know, all this kind of imagery and potentiality that our conscious mind is capable and even prepared to wrap itself around. So, it's, you know, and in my own idea of metaphysics, the conscious mind represents the fourth dimension, that astral plane that the Hindus identify with, beyond time and space, and yet still locked in my little head somewhere, apparently. That's the odd thing, isn't it? I mean, how easy is that to explain? I came across this guy, he's got arms and legs, and he eats, and he goes to the bathroom, and he covers himself with a fig leaf, and hair grows out of some parts of him and not others, and he's got, I don't know, several holes. Seems like he can hear through some of the holes and, you know, smell through other holes and touch with bits that come off of him. But none of those things are him. Well, what is him? I don't know. Something else. Well, where is it? I'm not sure. Inside of him, I guess. Well, open him up. What's inside of him? Well, nothing. You know, the blood and stuff. And when I open him up, he goes away. He dies. Where does he go? I don't know. Well, where was he? I don't know. Did you try the brain? Did you open that up? Yep, he's not in there. I mean, where is he? Where am I? Right? So, this is what I get out of Enoch. How do you explain the unexplainable? Where am I? Who am I? What am I inside of this casing? So, you know, anyway, that's what it makes me think when I read it. I don't try and incorporate it linearly so much, except when he's speaking of timing. Son of Man, and the kings will bow to him, and the time will come that this will happen and that will happen. You know, it seems reasonable to just, I don't know, stand back and see where, does that fit? You know, can we fit that anywhere in our grand tapestry that we see when we stand way back from everything? And I say, yeah, I can. These parts, no. I get a feeling from them of a dimensional experience that helps me stay attached to a deeper God that exists, that might really exist as a consciousness, as an infinite mind, rather than as this space God, this Zeus, or this Brahman that I simply exist as part of instead of separate from, created by, which is what Paul tells us. That's the strange thing. The Spirit didn't come first, but the dust. See, that's the departure from the Brahminic tale. The Spirit didn't come first, but the dust. The dust came, then the Spirit. Right? So anyway, it all reeks of this crazy Enochian, dimensional, unexplainable reality. So just, I don't know, think of these storehouses now that way, instead of in the anthropomorphic sense of human, you know, that it's silly and quaint and irrelevant. I don't think it's irrelevant. I just don't know what it all means, but I know what it gives me the impression of. And that is something deeper than the scientific explanation. So meaningful that every star we see, the reason we're so captivated by our little Earth, isn't necessarily because it's flat and inside a dome. As I say, it might be. I don't really care. Which one's the lie? One of them's the lie now. We can promise you that. I don't care. What's that change? Does it change anything? Does it change your perception of anything? What I say is that whether it's a flat Earth or a round globe in space, it captivates that consciousness in us that we have a hard time explaining in the physical world. And something like Enoch points to those stars and the happenings of this Earth that's captured in its atmosphere, at least, whether that atmosphere's in a bubble of water on a flat dome setup, or whether that atmosphere is captured in a vacuum of space. Either way, it is captured. and the interaction of that material world that's been, from my viewpoint, quite satisfactorily explained to me on the level of a basic belief in science is relevant. They say, I don't know that everything they tell me is true, or they just fake it and fill in a bunch of the blanks, like the whole "we come from apes." They see a pattern of adaptation, and then they extrapolate that. Okay. But their true science of studying how many times does a rat push a button when it's given a certain stimulation, I believe people are doing that and getting those bits of data and working that data into a vision of physical reality. There's nothing wrong with that. They were doing that, back in Aristotle's day, Socrates' day. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I say that doesn't explain, unless it's the only explanation, and then that leaves a lot of holes in the world of, the paranormal, metaphysical world that seems to be around us, in spite of the scientific explanations. So on the side of the supernatural, the scientific is but, a look at how it operates in a fixed climate that we call the third dimension. But even within that climate, we can't figure out how our own consciousness operates, and how near-death experiences and deja vu and people that, come back from the dead and all sorts of crazy sort of outer body experiences, shamanistic visions, all that kind of thing are very difficult for us to explain scientifically, except to explain away still, like coming from apes. We can't prove that, and it's still just a theory. And so all the explanations for how the supernatural, paranormal, I should say, paranormal at least, and, those are all theories as to why they happen. There's no science there. So again, I'm happy to look at Enoch as just another theory, but it's the theory that I find the most relevant, and that's a dimensional existence of a consciousness in which we are a subsidiary, physically made, if you will, created into a physical attribute that our consciousness can then be imbued with for the apprehension of something, right? In other words, we need this body so that our consciousness can learn something. That's my view. And that's why the body was made, and then the spirit came into it. And now the spirit is here to accomplish something, but only for a short time in the body. And then that spirit goes somewhere. Enoch, that fits an Enochian view. Enoch has all these places of abode for the soul. The Greeks then, all the religions of the world then have all these different dimensions and levels for the soul and such. It's only when you come to the Enlightenment and this materialism and then brain-dead Christianity in which you now have only heaven or hell. But otherwise, most of the world has always believed in something a little more, dimensional in aspect. And so that's what Enoch makes me think of as I'm reading this part of it. These storehouses. Okay, so the other angel spoke to me, the one who went with me, and showed me what is first and last in heaven, in the heights and under the dry ground, in the depths and at the ends of heaven and at the foundations of heaven, and in the storehouses of the winds, and how the spirits are distributed, and how they are weighed, and how the springs and the winds are counted according to the power of their spirit, and the power of the light of the moon, and the divisions of the stars according to their names, and how all the divisions are made, and the thunder according to the places where it falls, and all the divisions that are made in lightning, so that it may flash, and its hosts, how they quickly obey. For the thunder have fixed intervals, which have been given to its sound for waiting, and the thunder and the lightning are not separate, although not the same. Through a spirit the two of them move inseparably, for when the lightning flashes, the thunder utters its voice, and the spirit at the proper time causes it to rest, and divides equally between them, because the storehouse of the times for their occurrence is like that of the sand, which would seem to mean innumerable. and each of them at the proper time is held by a rein and turned back by the power of the Spirit, and likewise driven forward according to the number of the regions of the earth. Now, see, this gives me some, deep vision of what a spirit might be, this Lord of spirits. These things aren't like Casper the Friendly Ghost, spirits of the dead, right? They're spirits of things, like the spirit of anger, the spirit of selfishness or selflessness, the spirit of greed, the spirit of light, the spirit of darkness, the spirit of thunder. I mean, I don't know, right? We can imagine the spirit of nationalism, the spirit of Christianity, the spirit of, NASCAR. I got a cousin and a doctor friend, big NASCAR fans, right? You can feel their spirit when it's NASCAR race day. So anyway, the Lord of spirits is the one that we worship. Or that through Enoch, anyway, that's who Enoch's talking about, the Lord of spirits. So here's an idea of what this all means, rather than some absurd, quaint, poetic, mythological absurdity. No. Everything in this earth is, the real secret is it's the expression of the Lord of spirits and a type of spirit that is at work. Not like a human consciousness is at work. That's the part I guess I'm trying to get through. I've always thought of spirits like evil spirits or good spirits, or, like angels or devils. They're little entities floating around, flying around, darting around with their, either white robe or black robe or red robe with their little pitchfork or halo, right? Isn't that what spirits are? See, but this is helping me break that down for myself. I mean, that's, I'm just trying to keep presenting what someone studying this part of Enoch, might get out of it. That's what I'm getting out of it. Because otherwise, what are you going to get out of it? Little ghosts flashing around? I mean, I don't know. My mind has to reject that. Calling out, the lights by name, the thunder is held back by a rein, the lightning driven on by spirits. What kind of spirits if not the very spirits that are contained in an idea? Just like if I have an idea for, I spoke this last week about, this Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, all lives matter. Why not that? Just thinking about that thought gives me the spirit of that sort of union, that sort of campaign, that sort of movement. All lives matter, black and white coming together, right? Just the notion in my consciousness creates all sorts of spirits, you might say. And so that's the way I'm thinking of spirits, the notions of God taking on relative, activity in the realm of pure potentiality, of wavelength energy, which is what the physicists want to tell us quantum mechanics amounts to. And we'll go over that a little more if you guys will come and check out now these things we're doing with end time events. I'm trying to relate a little more of the headlines, like the Mandela effect and CERN and all these things that Christians are freaking out about and misguided about. And I think, again, what we got to be paying attention to is we're coming to this end times, and it seems like there's still going to be a lot of time, and what's going to be tested is the real truth, that even the very elect would be fooled. There's going to be a deception, and the deception's not going to come from little devils with pitchforks. It's going to come from all the good people. I think the church, the Western church, the Zionist church, all the big preachers and pastors that have been there since, Billy Graham was a 33rd degree Mason, he's in on the team for deception, I think. And so all of Christianity has been carefully led in the West to be this, brain dead haters and judgers of people, scared to death, ready to go to war, support war. basically Nazis. If you go back, almost the whole Nazi Germany was Christian of some sort. Protestants and Catholics, they were all Christians claiming to do this. Adolf Hitler was claiming that Nazi movement was a Christian movement. So don't think that can't happen again with this whole eradicating Islam. That's going to be a great Christian movement that I think Christianity is going to be sucked into to go, kill and destroy in Jesus' name. So anyway, that's what I'm warning people, Christians, on a Bible study. I'm assuming you have faith. That's why you're looking for a Bible study. You believe in Jesus. I'm trying to give you some evidence of what that belief might actually, what's the real Jesus, the real Christianity, the real story, the real perspective that might relate to. So you can have your feet on something firm, not the sand of this shifting world that we have today. Okay, so the thunder have fixed intervals. First of all, we're told that the hosts, how quickly they obey. Okay, that's all right. We've read this. Let me move on. People understand where I'm going with this. The literal interpretation isn't so important, I don't think. I don't know what it means to think, to anthropomorphize it and picture some spirit sitting up in the clouds sending thunder and lightning. I doubt it. And the spirit of the sea, S-E-A, the sea, the ocean. And the spirit of the sea is male and strong, and according to the power of its strength, the spirit turns it back with a rain, and likewise it is driven forward and scattered amongst all the mountains of the earth. That's right, speaking of natural geography as something spiritual. And not only that, when you think about the occultists and the Kabbalah and the knowledge, the interaction of male-female, right? The interaction of positive and negative, light and dark, as above, so below, all that occult stuff. Where'd they get that crap? They've been reading Enoch? Well, the Christians have been busy sending everybody to hell, waiting for a rapture? They seem to know about this male-female relationship being deeper. I never hear, they never taught me that when I was in Christian Bible studies through my life. So the spirit of the sea is male, and strong. The spirit of the sea is male and strong. That's an odd way to refer to something purely scientific and neutral. And according to the power of its strength, the spirit turns it back with a rain, and likewise it's driven forward and scattered amongst all the mountains of the earth. And the spirit of the hoarfrost is its own angel, and the spirit of the hail is a good angel. Now we not only got spirits, we got angels. So how confusing is this now with the millions and millions and innumerable angels around the house with the river of fire coming out and the head of days and the archangels going in and out. The spirit of the hoarfrost is its own angel. Right? So I don't know. The hoarfrost is so important that the thought isn't just the thought of God. It's got its own angel maintaining the thought. I don't know how to break that one down. The spirit of the hoarfrost is its own angel. Because the way I see spirits, they're the notions of the logos. So the spirit of the hoarfrost is its own angel. So the hoarfrost got its own angel. I don't know that gets me any closer to imagining what an angel is, but, there's a connection being made here. And the spirit of the hail is a good angel. Oh, okay. It's good to know. And the spirit of the snow has withdrawn because of its power. And it has a special spirit. And that which rises from it is like smoke, and its name is frost. And the spirit of the mist is not associated with them in their storehouse, but has a special storehouse. For its course is glorious, both in light and darkness, and in winter and in summer, and its storehouse is an angel. How's that? The mist, see? Because you got all this snow and stuff that's made from the cold, right? The crystallization of water, the composition of water being what it is and changed in that fashion, comes from its own storehouse in Enoch's vision, but not the mist. Mist is light and dark, winter, summer. Mist is its own storehouse. Its storehouse is an angel. Again, come on. You're going to try and put this in an anthropomorphized vision with the vision of the burning house that we started this whole storehouse thing with. It's either nonsense or it's a poem or, let it just, I don't know. I'm thinking it just is telling me reality is deeper. And on that deeper level, every natural thing is a spiritual thing. The spirit of the dew has its dwelling at the ends of heaven and is connected with the storehouses of the rain. And its course is in winter and in summer, and its clouds. And the clouds of the mist are associated, and one gives to the other. And when the spirit of the rain moves from its storehouse, the angels come and open the storehouse and bring it out. And when it is scattered over all the dry ground, it joins with all the water that is on the dry ground. And whenever it joins with the water that is on the dry ground, and something's missing there, some words that were apparently missing in the original. It's denoted by a parenthesis with an emptiness. So something there. And whenever it joins with the water that is on the dry ground, we don't know. Next sentence, for the waters are for those who dwell upon the dry ground, for they are nourishment for the dry ground from the Most High who is in heaven. Therefore, there is a fixed measure for the rain, and the angels comprehend it. So very interesting that this simply points out what seems so obvious to our scientific mind, but maybe not to Enoch and his time and the followers, that the rain just doesn't come from anywhere and go to nowhere. It adds to the water on the ground, and yet there's a certain amount of it that's designated to keep the whole system. I mean, that's what it says to me, that there's an enclosed system that the rain, mist, and dew all participate with the dry ground, and it's all for the benefit of the nourishment of the dry ground. I mean, so stuff could grow, so people could live on it. The waters are for those who dwell on the dry ground. So he's explaining this closed system, and the angels comprehend it. All these things I saw towards the garden of righteousness. And that's the end of this first section, so denoted by the translator. All these things I saw, meaning from when he was taken away and saw this place where the throne of fire surrounded by the cherubim and seraphim and Ophanim, and the house of fire's got a river of fire. It's surrounded by innumerable angels. The head of days comes out of this house with the archangels. Right? That's how this vision got going. And then this one angel takes him and says, come on, let me show you the secrets of the storehouses of the winds and the thunder and the lightning and the rain right? All these things I saw towards the garden of righteousness. Remember, he's come through these other visions where he's been shown these areas for the righteous and the chosen. Again, so these are visions. What do they say? He's been taken into some third heaven experience, right? His name's no longer with men. He's taken to some heaven. So he's seeing from a different dimension this representation that has to do with innumerable angels, seraphim, archangels. So you got at least 3 breakdowns there. You're just run-of-the-mill innumerable angels. These ones that never sleep, that seem to be the Zoan from Revelation, the seraphim, and or perhaps something even in addition to the seraphim, and cherubim, and Ophanim. And then you've got these archangels, Michael and Gabriel, and anyway, my mind is confused here at the end. I'm rushing to try and finish. Sorry. We all know the archangels. So this is, this vision, and then it breaks into these storehouses, so-called, which simply might be seen as reservoirs of energy designated, right, for this vision of the fact that these things aren't happening by pure chance. Lightning and thunder doesn't just come and go once in the world. No, these are coming out of storehouses. And he says they're like the sand. There's that many of these thunder events that can happen, innumerable. And the lights and the flashing lights and lightning are for a blessing. So anyway, I hope that the few of you that are following this are getting something out of Enoch. I really am, and I'm enjoying it, and I hope you'll stick with it, because we have a lot of really more what we'd call relevant stuff, where we can get back into the timing of things in the next few weeks. But I don't want to rush through it. I'm finding it very intriguing to me, and I want at least a record of it out there for anyone who wants to study Enoch thoroughly, to have another notion to think about. I would love to hear any comments, of course. I'm not afraid for people to enlighten me. I rather enjoy it. And I want to encourage people to listen to our weekly shows, which I'm either going to add another show, or perhaps every now and then, if I don't have the time, I might have to just skip one, and I'll try and keep 2 going a week. The Bible study and the World War III show, and now the events of the end times, because I want people to really be aware of what's coming and not be scared by the news. Jesus said, don't be disturbed by all this. The time is not yet. And, watch out. So let's all watch out together. Anyway, thanks for being here. Love your neighbor. Don't ask them what, doesn't matter if they know Jesus. Show them Jesus by loving them. And when they ask you why it is that you're willing to give so much more than anyone else, that's your time to say, well, that's what my master does. Oh, who is your master? Oh, my master's Jesus. They'll fall off the chair if they're from, if they've known any of the kind of people I've known, the people that brought me up in the Christian church. So anyway, I say follow Jesus, show Jesus. That's eternal life. Doesn't matter what you call yourself. The righteous will follow him, Believers have some special blessing coming. I don't doubt that. If you believe he spilled his blood for you, well, you can't do better except to follow him, I suppose. So anyway, I think we're all the light's going to shine on all of us. And I think, thank God, we follow a merciful, forgiving God whose judgment will be righteous. And I believe that we'll all feel his love in the end. So we should show that love to each other now. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you all next.